Hi, everybody. This is Mark from Being Reasonable YouTube channel. And I have three friends with me today, and I'll have them introduce themselves. But we have another video of mine to review. And I appreciate you guys doing this because this one was a challenge. And especially at the time when I wasn't really understanding the reasons behind what Mayala was saying. And I think, as sometimes when you go through videos again, you'll get a little bit more clarity of that. And I'm very curious about what you guys think as we go through this. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and please engage with our YouTube channels because we all do this because we think it's important. Let's start with you, Reid.
Hey, Mark. Thanks. Yeah, glad to be here. Reid here from Cordial Curiosity, and excited to do this.
I'll go next.
Will?
Why not? Hi, I'm Will. I'm from Inspire Reflection, and I would definitely like you to follow my YouTube channel because it's brand new and it's like my first video went up today. So like, comment, and subscribe. Oh God, I feel so cheap.
All right, and Janosch from Germany. Follow this guy for now because right now I don't have a YouTube channel yet. When I do, I'll announce it here.
Just hack mine.
And I want to say I haven't seen this video that we're watching today. I think it's two and two, right? Two people have seen it, two people haven't.
I've seen it.
Mark was there.
I believe I was there.
Mark was there.
Mark was there. Yeah,
I've been told. And Reid has seen it. And so this is a gentleman. His name is Joe, and he is a campus minister at UNC who I reached out to, and he was very gracious enough to come on my show.
cool.
All right, let's get into the video.
I really try to make this. We try to go on a journey together about it, and I really do my best to understand how you know what you know and how you've come to believe what you believe. And
Sure.
I try to ask good questions, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't quite get there, but I try. But do you have an important belief you wish to discuss?
Yeah, I think it's one that's not only foundational to my own belief, but I think it's recognizable in others. When you sent me the link, well, the first thing I did was follow the link and listen to a number of the guests that you had interviewed previously. And I think there's a common denominator there from a belief perspective. Not that we're all these beliefs are the same.
Okay.
But from the starting point that I believe, first of all, that we are spiritual in nature. Now, I also believe that we have body, mind, and soul as well, and that we live in a very material, naturalistic world. But I think inherently that each person is spiritual in nature, and I think that most human beings have a sense of it, even if we couldn't articulate it or understand it fully. And so I think that gets expressed across a lot of different religions or a lot of different belief systems, obviously. But I think it's foundational to our human existence and understanding who we are. I think I felt that need for a long time in my life, even though I didn't grow up in church, had already graduated from the university before I came to follow Jesus. So my perspective from that end was there's something that I'm missing and I need, and in that belief process, I think what I've discovered is it's that relationship with God is the missing component. We are spiritual beings created in God's image for relationship with Him and with each other. And when that's missing, then we all feel the lack, and then I think we try to fill that in the best way that we can. And for me, that was certainly choosing to follow Jesus. So.
Well, thank you for explaining your belief. And
All right.
yeah, so I think one thing, again, to pay attention to maybe as this one goes on, and where I found this challenging, is I really had a difficult time understanding the nature of the reasons for his belief. And sometimes people are, sometimes it's my understanding. You think you're understanding something, but you're not understanding it. And sometimes it can be the case that an IL is not, maybe might not be certain himself, or the reasons may shift, or it's just, this is a good exercise in that to really get try to get really clear on what it is, the reason why your IL will says what he says is true.
Well, even just the claims, I'm saying claims because I could hear a number of claims. It was we are spiritual in nature. The world is also materialistic. We are made up of body, mind, and soul, I heard. And then he also talked about Jesus and God and how that was a spiritual component. So quite a few different routes that you could take, that you could go from here.
Good point. You put a lot on the table.
Yeah, I'm hoping in a moment you're going to pick a rabbit, because that chasing all of those is going to get really complex, I think. Just as a point about what you just said then, Mark, I think it's easy to mistake a conversation that honestly attempts to have an honest discourse but fails because of just a misunderstanding or whatever the reason, as dishonest. As in, if it's easy to look at that and think, oh, well, you've not understood something, or you've not, picked up on what he actually said, or you've accidentally used a definition incorrectly or understood it incorrectly, as therefore you are being dishonest in this conversation. And I think, of course, if you're going to then put that on YouTube, it's going to be perhaps even more likely to be interpreted uncharitably in that sense. But I think it's just that there is a fallibility in human communication, like undeniably, right? There's just no way we can get this stuff right all the time, every day. I think what's really important is intentions.
Sure, and I'm sure my IL had it clear in his mind, his reasons, and I just was having difficulty absorbing them, and you'll see that as time goes on too. So.
Right.
Yeah, to me, this is just vanilla Christianity. I may ask more clarifying questions to figure out which kind of Christianity, but I would try to steer it towards a core proposition about Christianity. Either God exists, the Christian God exists, or Jesus rose from the dead. Let's try to steer it in that direction.
And if I understand your belief correctly, to summarize it, as you said, that we are spiritual in nature.
Correct.
And that is the fundamental belief, and it'll help me, I think, if before we start talking about that more, and the more people have sat in the chair where you're sitting, especially when people have used the word spiritual, it's I used to assume a lot, and I shouldn't, and I really want to know what you mean by spiritual when you say spiritual in nature.
Yeah, right now you're going with the very first thing he said, but he went on for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it's just basically Christianity is true. That's the main claim.
Yeah. I think we end up getting there, but right. I think I got hung up on. I was just trying to pick apart some definitions, but yes, that would have been easier to laser focus.
Actually, I wouldn't have assumed that Christianity is the core belief. I would have tried to summarize all of the things, all the claims that he made, and asked him, what would you see as the fundamental claim, the core belief that is fundamental to all of this? Or is there any one of these? Important one. Yeah.
I could definitely see you struggling to replay all of the things that were mentioned almost, because you're listening attentively to the conversation, you're following it, you're trying to understand what is meant, and of course then trying to reflect on that in the moment to tease out the thing to then speak on. But yeah, maybe here you could have asked him what would you say was the most important of those claims. There are lots of things in there. SE is usually more effective in exploring a single claim, and like maybe you could choose which one you felt was more interesting to you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And sometimes in the beginning, someone can shoot out a lot of claims, and you try to remember them all. And so one strategy to do this is what Reid does. And if you look at his videos, he has a board. And sometimes you'll see that if there's, someone pushes out a lot of claims, and then he'll take the time and he'll write it out. Okay, what are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying? And then he'll pick out or have the IL pick out, okay, what is it that we're going to talk about? And that's a very, it's a good way to do that. It really kind of, that obviously makes things clear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it carries certainly the supernatural component to it, meaning that there's something to us beyond just what we see around us and what we can touch and feel and taste and see. And what that may mean long term or eternally speaking is that when these bodies quit functioning, right, they break down, they were going to stop at some point, that we do have a destination beyond just here. I do believe we've got a purpose and a mission while we're here to make it a better place and to represent God. I think there was the Bible Project put it one way. It's we're here to represent creation to God and God to creation, and that's the purpose and mission right now. But we've got one beyond that is still a mystery. It's not like we can look beyond death and go, okay, this is what it's going to be like. We can't. But I think we're designed for it, whatever comes next, and so we carry on even when the physical dies.
So there, by spiritual, I mean supernatural, and then something carries on when we die. On a scale from 1 to 7, how confident would you say that your belief is true?
There's always a bit of mystery to belief, right? Faith has that component. I think that's one thing we wrestle with students every day is at some point as human beings, we all have to come to a settling point of what we can know and what we can't know. And that's where the faith and the belief process comes in. But on a number scale, gosh, I hate taking tests like this, but
Yeah, Janosch.
Sorry.
Did you want to say something?
No.
No.
I would put it high because I firmly believe it, but at the same time recognize it could sound a bit arrogant to take a high number. But 1 to 7, yeah, I would say I feel pretty confident in that one at 7. I would put it there.
Okay. And then on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you that the things that you believe end up being true?
How important is it that they become
That they are true, that they correspond with truth or reality?
Oh, yeah. I think for me, that's one of the reasons why Christianity appealed to me from that side is I didn't have to check my intellect at the door to believe. And at the same time, I feel like my sense of it is when I look at the human condition, I studied history for my undergrad degree and still love it to this day. When I look at the history of human beings on the planet, I come to recognize, at least for me, I think that Christianity best explains the human condition and best provides the remedy for it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're really getting to a central claim. So
Cool.
You're getting to my next question. So
Yeah.
The core claim you're exploring, I think, started off as a spirituality, the spiritual nature. And now there's a change in the claim. I don't know. I feel like it's worth reframing if we're going to reframe on. I mean, this sounds like a much more tangible position, I guess, to talk about. And so maybe it's worth saying, can we, would that be your claim that you'd like to explore, and then maybe even re-confidence scale it and enter back in again? I don't know. But yeah, this sounds like a more substantial claim for sure.
Yeah. Not yet. Travis, feel free to do so.
I was wondering if maybe when you ask, how confident are you that this belief is true, that your belief is true?
I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
I said, when you ask for the confidence, about the confidence scale, I think you said, how confident are you on a scale from 1 to 7 that your belief is true? And I got the impression that maybe he wasn't aware that this question was, from your perspective, specifically a question about the claim we are spiritual beings. I got the impression that maybe he was talking about this, everything that he explained in the beginning. It was sort of all connected for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and a little bit more clarification in the beginning of this probably would have gone a far way, and I think we eventually get there, but we probably could have saved some time.
Can I ask? It was cold outside, and I sort of get definitely looks a little chilly.
It was like 20 degrees out there. Yeah.
and I was wondering, were you particularly apprehensive about this conversation? Was there anything about it that was felt more significant to you than other conversations, Pat?
Right. Yeah. I think it seemed more serious because I am freezing my butt off. I am just cold. So
Okay.
it makes you look austere and just I think
We need to get this done quick. Gotcha.
Also, I think that your interlocutor is quite charismatic. He almost looks like like an actor or something, like someone who could be.
Oh, and I don't.
Yeah, sure. Now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I bet you, and I even mentioned that after we talked, that I said, I bet you the kids really engage with you because you just have this way about you, this this way you talk and present yourself, and so
All right.
Best explains the human condition and
Well,
best provides the remedy for it.
You're getting to my next question, so and you're probably going to know what I'm going to ask is, how do you know that your belief is true? What it is?
Well, ultimately, I think that's where the mystery part comes in. I think belief is there's always going to be a certain amount of hope in your belief system that it is true. I think there's enough evidence through the course of my following Christ that I would say these are kind of like more mile markers in my journey to confirm that at least I'm headed in the right direction. But it still leaves the destination open, because I would look at the destination more in answer to your question is that's more like the proof and that, hey, this is true. I think God asks us to trust him along the way, but along the way you find certain experiences and encounters and relationship with him and through the scriptures that kind of egg you on a little bit, like you're headed in the right direction even though you've not finished your course yet, or you've arrived at a place of all knowing. We won't arrive at that place in any case, not on this side, without God revealing things to us.
So that feels like a contradiction to his 7 on the confidence scale. I mean, just that feels like, okay, we're at 7, which is maximally confident on your scale. In the truth of this, and then we're talking about it's sort of hope. There's a bit of faith, and there's faith and a bit of hope, and also it's sort of pointing in a direction. It's not, and so that definitely feels to me like it's the sort of normal position to call out at this point, I think.
Yeah, that's why I like 0 to 100, because it gives you more range potentially. Is he at 100 or 99.9? With a 6
Reid,
to 7,
if you diss that 1 to 7 scale, I swear.
Reid is now opting for a 100-point scale to 1 decimal place, so that's good.
Yeah, we could just use a scale from 0 to 1,000 so that we can get rid of the decimal place.
Rambling answer. I apologize for it.
No. And I'm just trying to follow you. I really want to understand. So, when asking the question, like, how do you know your belief is true?
Yeah.
And you're telling me, is it experience? Is it, you're talking about kind of a journey? I'm trying to, if you know something, and I just really want to know how you know it.
You seem more challenged about this than you normally do, Mark.
Well, I really didn't understand, because, now that I've heard it back, I heard the trust, I've heard the experience that it's true, and hope. I think I heard it, hope. So I think there's 3 things, and in those 3 things, that's a lot. And so I didn't quite gather that at the time that he had said 3 things, I think.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. You could be listening attentively and still miss things because while somebody's speaking, you're mentally trying to fit that into a model of what this person's trying to represent. And so sometimes the conscious work of building your mental model distracts you from the actual what's being said in front of you. So you can be listening attentively and still miss things. And it's, definitely worth noticing that.
Yeah, and those are 3 big buckets, trust, hope, and the other thing I said. Trust, hope.
Faith?
Faith,
trust, hope.
Yeah, hope,
personal
trust,
experience. You said evidence.
Personal experience, evidence.
Yeah. And so that's really 3 huge avenues you can go down depending on what your IL says. And I don't think I've ever had an IL say all 3 at the same time, and so that was challenging.
I thought it was risky that you said, I want to understand you know something, and I really want to understand how you know it. And I believe that he never said, I know this. He said he believes in it. He said he is at a 7 in his confidence
Huh.
on the confidence scale, but he never said, "I know this to be true." And I
So,
thought, I mean,
do you think that
probably not a big deal, but it's a risk.
That's an interesting thing about the idea of confidence, though, isn't there? Like, confidence can imply a certain sense of inner conviction builds into confidence, right? That's not the same as saying certain truth. Like,
to me, to me, 7 out of 7 to me says I know that it is true.
Right, but I think maybe it's worth. I think maybe it's worth articulating that and saying,
Yeah.
look, if 0 on the scale is like, I just don't know, I can't, I'm not sure, and 7 is certain truth,
Yeah.
then where would you be on the scale? Because otherwise, if you say on a 1 to 7, how confident are you that this is true? This gentleman definitely exudes confidence. He's definitely a confident person, and so I think 7 on the scale of confidence would be fair. But I don't know if we could then say that he was certainly that it was true.
Yeah, well, when we talk about atheism or theism and Gnostic theism, agnostic theism, Gnostic atheism, agnostic atheism, we see that as two different criteria, right? Two different things, right? Belief and knowledge. And someone could have 100% confidence in their belief in God, but still say, we cannot know for sure, but I'm very strong in my belief. I couldn't be any stronger in my belief. So
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah. So I guess it's probably good to ask if that means that when they say 7, does that mean that you know for certain, or that your belief couldn't be any stronger?
That's a good point.
I think it's certainly. I mean, we all would love to just have a series of proofs that say this is true, and I know this to be true. I think if we're all honest, we have to say at some level, I believe this to be true rather than I know this to be true. But at the
Makes your
same
point,
time, I think it's back to our starting point. I think the relationship component that we were designed for to have with God solidifies that for me in feeling that I know it to be true, even though I recognize fully that's an arrogant thing in a lot of ways, a presumptuous thing to say. But I know I need relationship, and the void confirms that in me, that it exists. I think C.S. Lewis, and I'm really bad at quoting people, so I'm paraphrasing drastically here. C.S. Lewis said something along the lines of, I believe in Christianity like I believe I see the sunrise, not because I can see it, but by it I see everything else. And what I found is I understand myself and everything else around me better through my belief. And that helps confirm it for me to be more likely true than not true.
Are you saying that the belief creates a framework from which the belief is true for you, that it makes sense to you? I'm struggling. I'm really trying to understand.
We need to get this man an outdoor heater is what needs to happen here. This is clearly a frozen Mark Solomon here that is
just not understanding. I'm really trying to understand. I'm just not there. Because what you know at a 7, and help me know how you. I mean, that's a really solid. That is just a very strong, intense belief, and you know something, and I would just,
there has to be, I think, an inner peace that comes to you in the knowing process. Like, for example, sometimes you come to a crossroads in your life and you've got opportunities and decisions to make. Which am I going to take this job? Am I going to do this thing in my life? And as a believer, I would kind of sit at that intersection of life, in a sense, and provide it to God, or put it before God in prayer. And when the peace came to me about a direction to take, then I might I might take that direction. It doesn't guarantee him an outcome, a good outcome even. It may guarantee me a hard road. I suspect a lot of us would say that if I knew the road that I was going to have to take to follow God every day, maybe I wouldn't have taken that road, and which is why a lot of times it's not revealed to you. But
okay,
Yeah.
I think he's saying inner peace is a reason that it gives him inner peace, and that is how he knows that it is true, which is a little different than I think he said before. Just so I can keep it straight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sort of a texture of evidentiary argument here from him. Like he's talking about there are lots of things that he's sort of pointing to that are evidence-like, and I think that's useful. But there's been now quite a lot of them, and not any one of them has really been challenged. So I think at this point he's still sort of trying to explain it to you, and none of this is sort of him reflecting on whether any of these are potentially paths that could lead you to untrue outcomes. Yeah.
And I don't think we can blame you for having a hard time understanding his reasons for his position, because he's moving around from one reason to another, and yeah, I'm having a hard time following.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing that to be clear. I don't think he's doing that to be evasive. I think he's trying to articulate it in different ways so that you can hear it, in a way that helps you understand his position, I think. Absolutely. And as a result, more rabbits are springing up for you to chase. But yeah.
These are hard things to articulate to yourself.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think you're saying the belief, and please correct me if I'm wrong,
go for it.
But the belief has given you a direction. And then when you are on this path, and it's you feel it somehow that you're going in the correct way or the correct direction.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I think there's also a sense of just knowing inside. Knowing, I guess maybe there's a couple different kinds of knowing we're talking about right now. Yeah, knowing like, I know that house across the street is there. I can go put my hands on it. I can walk through it. In a lot of ways, I know it's there. I think with belief, there's also a knowing that comes of residing in a place that you're supposed to be, and whether that's in a relationship or a place in life, that you just have an inner peace that you can't manufacture yourself. And I think that's probably what drives my confidence and my belief, is that there's a confidence that comes from outside of me. Because if I just go day to day, there's plenty of worry and fears and doubts and things that are going to come that I'm going to wrestle with on my own.
Sure. So he's talking about a knowing that comes outside of himself, I think. Or...
Yeah, I think it's this confidence that he gets that keeps him going through his day when things are difficult, when he's challenged in the world. There is a sense of confidence that he finds that seems to him to come from something outside. He can't justify the confidence internally. He doesn't believe he's the author of that confidence, and therefore he sees that as evidence for God acting in his life.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I like that he compared it to human relationships, and that like if you are in a relationship, there are certain things. There's a place in your life that you're at, or in a relationship that you just know, kind of, and it's not something that you have tangible evidence for in the same sense as there's a house across the street. So I like this example, and I really believe that, like, well, I haven't seen this, but I think a good direction now would be to confirm that is the actual reason. This inner peace, this confidence that he gets by simply relying on this belief, and then see if that wasn't there, and it didn't move him down on the confidence scale, then of course you would have to identify another real reason.
if somebody was to give you evidence, the outsider test here, inner peace was invoked in somebody else to different conclusions that contradictory goals, would that be evidence of the truth of their God? But could emotional reactions or responses also be invoked artificially? Have you ever been sort of become overwhelmed at the side of a movie for some reason, or felt like the sudden rush of emotion has also come from outside? Maybe in some way emotions always sort of feel as if they're coming from the outside and aren't really authored by us, right? They sort of overwhelm us.
Yeah, I think I took you right on that one, Will. I think coming up.
Cool.
He's appealing to these, Christianity as a way to explain various things, purpose and all this, and having inner peace, having a changed life. So like do a real reason check of, all right, if you had an alternate explanation for getting these things or answering these broad questions, would that change your confidence about Christianity or some core claim of Christianity? And then if yes, then you can go into more defeasibility and outsider tests.
Real reason checking at this point, I think definitely, that's a really good point, because there's just been so many things at this point. And to be fair, it sounds like he's actually working through it. He definitely is working with you on this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could someone have that really strong sense of knowing, and that, like you said, like you just know it, and it's a different kind of knowing, yet come to a different conclusion than you've come to, or with your sense of knowing, are you, if you know something as strongly as you know something, that there's only one conclusion that you'd be able to come to, and that would be your belief?
Yeah, I think it kind of begs the question is, a lot of people will object to the traditional Christian stance that Jesus is the only way to God, let's say. And then it kind of opens it up to why would you be so dogmatic and strong about, like, let's say Christianity or belief in Christ is the only way back to God versus Buddhism or Hinduism or any other ism that might exist, or atheism, if it was true, might be the way to go. But someone put it to me this way, it's kind of a simplistic answer, but why does there have to be more than one way? If you were in need of saving in an ocean and someone threw you a life preserver, you probably wouldn't turn it away if that was the option. Now, again, I get that can sound very, very arrogant and dismissive of other religions and people's beliefs, and I don't mean it that way. To me, again, I think...
And I don't take it that way.
I really don't mean it that way at all. And I interact with a lot of students and a lot of people that aren't of the same belief system that I operate in. But I find it to resonate true within me, which I think to me is a very... It's like it should be there. It should exist, that kind of piece of knowing inside yourself to a very strong degree, even if it's not 100%. It should resonate with you if that's what you were created for. That's why I kind of started with, if you are a spiritual being created in the image of God and for relationship with God, then there should be an exchange, and like in any relationship that should happen, and there should be a confidence of, okay, I'm in the right place with the right person.
And this is a thought experiment I've used many times before, and this maybe will help me understand where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. And so if Timmy is sitting next to you, and Timmy, let's say, is a Muslim, and Timmy, with the same intensity that you know, that knowing that you know that your God is true, Timmy, with that same intensity, knows that his God, Allah, is true to him.
Sure.
And if I'm just a third person, and I just see you guys talking, and I really want to know what's more objectively true in the world, is there a way I can find out? Is it between you guys talk, or is there something I can glean from the conversation?
Yeah, I think you can. I think any person should endeavor to do that, honestly.
Yeah.
When we're on campus and at the university, and students from various backgrounds, like tomorrow, for example, we'll be out in the pit area right in front of the student union, just me trying to connect with students. So about 4 hours we'll be out there, just have a connection table, giving away free cookies tomorrow, and anyone that wants to engage further can, and I think they should. I think we've and maybe the Christian church is at fault over history for this too, is we've become a little bit defensive about
I'm still
the idea
having
of some
difficulty following him about that. I think about how me talking with Timothy, and I'm not sure where he's going with this here, but I was just confused.
I think he's talking about trying to engage with people more broadly about a religious narrative, and trying to get to get the messages out there so people can start to decide for themselves. I feel that that's what he's heading towards here. I think the outsider test, because he almost posed the outsider test himself, actually, because he brought up the kind of comparative, perspectives of different religions, and sort of suggested. I wasn't quite sure I followed his point about the life, that there is only, does there have to be many ways, or I think maybe I wondered if he meant, does there have to be only one way, as in, maybe other religions are sort of valid in some additional way. I wasn't sure I understood that analogy. I
think I understood it to mean if you're in the water and someone throws you a lifesaver, you shouldn't wait for the helicopter and reject the lifesaver. You take what you just need one way to get to be saved, basically.
But there was this point where he was saying there were multiple ways, as if they were equally valid in some sense, which was the part that I didn't understand.
And that's where I wasn't sure if he even thinks of different religions as mutually exclusive. It might be that he understood the outsider test to mean, should Timothy engage with both a Muslim and a Christian, or should you engage with Jimmy, the Muslim, as well as a Christian, to figure out what resonates with you, what's true for you. So I'm not sure if he really believes that there is an objective truth, and that either the Christian God is real or the Muslim God is real.
And it's good just to make your goals clear in the beginning. I want to evaluate the quality of your reasons, and get those reasons as a list. Find the biggest reason that gives them a certain level of confidence, and then focus on one at a time. And first check for relevance. Is it even something that relates to the claim being true? If it is, then check if it's something that actually gives them confidence. If it is, then check it. Then ask the question, is this a good reason to believe this is true? And focus on that question. Yeah.
One coming from a different perspective on belief and faith. I think that's an answer to the question that I probably was not articulating very well, but in regards to this, I think I have confidence that if you have confidence in your belief and you really feel that you know this to be true, then you trust that those that are exploring it and plumbing the depths, so to speak, and investigating it will find the truth along the way. Which is why if Timothy's sitting next to me, I'm wholeheartedly endorsing him to present his belief system alongside of mine. And I would encourage you to, or anyone else for that matter, to truly explore it. But you're going to do that, you're going to have to dig, right? You can't. I think it's one of the things that we're struggling with in our culture today is that I see this with even my own kids at home. They walk around, I'm pointing to my phone now, we walk around with so much information, the history of the world in your pocket, and we're absorbing so much that I think the tendency is that your mental sponge kind of gets filled up and overloads at some point. And so we just slap labels on things, and we tend to know so many things, but only at a surface level, that we never dive into it. But to do that on a faith perspective, whether it's Islam or Christianity or some other form, you're gonna have to read the scriptures.
We're not anchored on truth enough here, because the lack of truth being like at the core of the conversation is making it really hard, because he sidestepped the outsider test by just basically saying, I'm confident that my guy would win, because I think it's the right one. And obviously that's what I think. And, and so you can talk to Timmy, you can talk to me, and I have confidence in my guy. What we're not talking about here is confidence. What we're talking about here is truth and confidence in it being true. And how can you distinguish between which of these two propositions is true purely based on the testimony of the individuals? Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
Going to have to get some commentaries together to help you to understand
Sure.
the context in which they were all written and who they were written to and those types of things. And if you're willing, I trust that you'll come out where you need to be.
I guess what I'm thinking is if Timmy was sitting where you were sitting, I could envision Timmy saying basically the same thing, that he believes really intensely in
Sure.
the Quran, and if you really want to know what he knows, you need to read the Quran. You need to really, follow him and know what he's, and really kind of dig deep. And
Sure.
and you're telling me that pretty much the same thing. And I guess where I'm left with is that, and tell me if this is not correct, that intensely believing a belief that is true and intensely believing a belief that may not be true
Yeah.
might feel the same. It might feel, that knowing might feel the same to each person.
Sure.
But it seems that we're saying that that the belief itself is at odds with each other.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect someone, if they believe something, to be whole.
I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure if it's your frustration or the cold, but you sound almost angry here.
I hope not.
And I don't think it's definitely not intentional, but there's a sense of frustration, because I think you can feel, and it's coming out a little bit. And you're normally such the chillest guy in these conversations.
Yeah. All right.
And I think that that's kind of presenting your cases a little bit more aggressively than you're intending to.
Good to know. Good to know.
Wholly dedicated
I like
to
that
that.
you doubled down on the outsider test.
Yes, that was very good.
However, you were kind of making these assumptions that he would also agree that either the Christian or the Muslim can be right, but they can't both be right at the same time.
Well,
And
I thought he was saying that, but maybe not. I mean, I thought when he was talking about his arrogance and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm
not sure though.
Couldn't have hurt to clarify, to ask for clarification if he agrees with that. And then also, maybe you could have asked him, do you believe that it's possible that if Timmy was sitting here, he could be giving me, he could be saying basically the same thing as you. He could be giving me the same reasons and be just as confident, etc. You kind of said, it seems to me like that could just as well be the case.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of what Will was getting at too. I think that question could have been more open-ended. Yeah.
However, I don't feel like it hurt the rapport in this case. It was fine, but yeah.
I don't think so.
Someone, if they believe something, to be wholly dedicated to that belief, which is why, honestly, when you asked me the first 1 to 7 question, I didn't want to answer 7, but at the same time, I think I was thinking to myself, well, either you're all in on this or you're not all in on this at the same time, and I get that doesn't leave really much wiggle room for even myself.
But why all in? I'm just trying to understand, like, why? Because when I think about beliefs, I believe.
Yeah.
Most beliefs, I don't.
Sorry.
I don't know what I'm.
That would have been a great point in the conversation to just let it sink in, or maybe repeat it back and let him hear his own words coming from you.
All in.
You
mean the all in comment?
Yeah, the all in comment, and then it doesn't really leave a lot of wiggle room even for myself. I think that would have been an interesting point too.
Yeah, and he raised it as well, so that was self-generating. one thing that occurred to me to say earlier was that you've mentioned in the previous a review session where you ask for a confidence, what would increase your confidence and what would decrease your confidence. And I think those are great questions, by the way. I really like them. And the idea of like what would increase your confidence at the moment, like you've said 7. Is there anything that could increase your confidence? Now, if you'd have done that, now you've discovered there's some extra height here in this scale. And I think that might be an interesting one. And actually, there was a point even earlier in the conversation where he said, it would be great if we had proof that we could point to. And I thought that was really interesting. So I think he's. I definitely feel like, especially in this conversation, the concept of confidence versus convict or a claim of certainty or a level of certainty is feeling like it's really getting muddy in the waters here, because I definitely think he equates confidence as something different.
Yeah.
Most beliefs, I don't know what I'm at a 7 at. I really don't. I'm just trying to think of. I'm just have to think about it for a second. But is it admirable to be at a 7?
I don't know. I don't know if I would look at it in those terms necessarily, but I would expect it. If Timothy's sitting next to me, I would expect him to believe through and through what he believes. Or if someone believes in, I think you had someone on your podcast, for example, that was a believer in Taoism, I believe. I would expect you to be fully engaged with your heart, mind, and soul in that prospect as well.
Would we think that Timothy's belief is less true if he believed it at a 6.5?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Would we feel less confident that Timmy's belief is true if he believed it at a 6.5?
Necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't diminish anyone's faith for not being 100%, in. And when you asked me that earlier, I was kind of assigning it really to the origination, where I think is the best explanation of who we are as beings on the planet and in the universe. And in that sense, I can't find a better explanation at this time. Is there one? Maybe. I wouldn't. I never try to close my mind completely off to it. But when it comes to belief, at some point, you have to either choose to believe or not believe. That doesn't mean we don't wrestle with stuff. We all
think there's
wrestle.
something else here, which is like, firstly, this interlocutor is like very self-aware in some really interesting places, and I really commend this. But yeah, like there's a big distinction again between something that we treat as if it's true with 100% conviction and something that we know is true. So, I've talked before about, the idea of, philosophical skepticism. We can never know anything to be true, but we do have to treat some things as true. Mm-hmm. And we would treat them as 100% true. And if asked, we would say they were true, but we can still do all of that with us recognizing that we wouldn't necessarily be able to say for 100% certainty that they were definitely true.
The belief at some point. You have to either choose to believe or not believe. That doesn't mean we don't wrestle with stuff. We all wrestle with doubts about our own beliefs throughout our whole lives. It's not like, oh, I got it all figured out, everything's smooth sailing here the rest of the way. It's not. We deal with death and sickness and suffering in the world and a whole lot of things that
he's mentioning that we all have doubt. Well, when Anthony uses the scale, he always says 0 is no confidence, all doubt. 100% is no doubt, all confidence, 100% sure. Him admitting that we all have doubt would have allowed for the question. So you do have doubt. So if
that's a good point. I could have revisited the scale at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's now appealing to personal choice. Is just choosing to believe something true a good way to believe something? Like,
it's a false
Sorry.
It's a false dichotomy in any case. There are many things that we feel that we have to make a choice on, but we can just say we don't know. That's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Bring into question, what you believe. So,
well, maybe if I asked you the other way, would it be would there be? I know you're at a 7, but could there something that would happen to make you even more intense about the belief, like even stronger? Like I know you're way up there, but
Right.
it's something that you experience in your life, or more of a knowing, as you mentioned. I think that's how you know what you know.
Yeah.
Is there something that could happen that would increase the knowing?
I don't. Yeah, I suppose there could be, definitely, but I think it would have to come from outside the natural realm. In other words, I think God would have to reveal himself in some way that you just have to sit back and go, okay, this could only be God.
Right.
This can't be something that Joe just thought up and thought this would be a good idea, or someone else manipulated you into believing. It'd have to come from outside with no other explanation. But I think in that case, something like that. I mean, something miraculous that, although we have a great capacity, I think, as human beings to rationalize away just about even the miraculous things in the world too. So, yeah.
Right. So, something miraculous happened. And I guess maybe what we're saying is miraculous is like something tangible. Like, I mean, are we saying like? I'm just trying to think of. Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
I really want to say this really bothers me, and I feel like it's something that's really worth challenging when we hear it. The idea that if something becomes rational, it's somehow less magical. Like, we understand so many things about the world, and to me, they're still magical because, like, they're incredible. They're I just find this idea that the moment we begin to understand something, it stops being magic.
Oh, right.
Like, it really, really bothers me. And my best example of this is the concept of electricity, which we think we understand. We've got a really good handle on it. But my God, electricity just looks like magic. In any storybook ever, electricity looks like magic, and it does amazing things, like lets us talk around all over the internet, powers out glowing television devices, it lets us talk to
I have
our
my
families.
magic brick here.
Exactly.
So,
And you go back a couple of hundred years and you would be burned at the stake for being a wizard. This is magic by another name. So this idea that the moment we can rationalize something, it ceases to be special is a really unfortunate idea that seems to have gotten around.
Plus, I believe the idea that we are really good at rationalizing away the miraculous things. That idea that we are really good at finding explanations for things that I would rather believe has no explanation.
I didn't catch that. That's a really good point, Janosch. Yep, that was really good. That's what it was saying.
Yeah.
Many years ago, my dad passed away. He had a lot of heart and health issues. But he was in the hospital, he was in the IC unit, and we were there with him around the clock. My brothers and I were just taking rotations, making sure someone was there. And in walked a friend of my brother's, and we didn't expect to see him. And so I said, well, what are you doing here? And he said, well, actually, he says, I came to the hospital because my grandfather is up on the 3rd floor, and he's going to pass away soon. He's got a hole in his heart. And so they've called the whole family in. They want to say proper goodbyes. There's nothing else medically can be done. And then I heard that you guys were here because of your dad, so I just thought I'd stop in, which was a really generous gesture of him. Well, my dad the next day had a massive heart attack and was just gone instantly. There was nothing they could do for him. Yeah. His grandfather, on the other hand, beyond any explanation, the hole in his heart closed up. And they sent him home, and I don't know how many more years he lived after that, because this was maybe 1994. Yeah, 94. That was beyond any explanation. I think there's a lot of data that's coming out now in the medical field from doctors who have worked in their field for many years, and the correlation between prayer and things happening in the physical realm that are beyond explanation or beyond medical explanation at this time. Doesn't mean you couldn't come up with a medical explanation later, but for what we know right now, medically, biologically, and otherwise. So I think those things go a long ways to kind of reinforce that belief. But at the same time, I think you could just go, well, maybe the doctors were wrong. I know a couple right now that were told unequivocally they couldn't have children. Just absolutely no way they could have children. And
medical anecdotes
took them a long time to
they're always the hardest things to sit and listen through. And, because, in that case, in order to refute the explanation that's provided, you would have to have much more information than the person is likely to be able to provide. And it's also, they're always very personal and very deeply emotionally affecting.
Yeah.
So
They're hard to talk about too. Yeah.
they're really difficult to get
Especially
into.
you're talking about your own father's passing, and yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, however, he gave he basically offered two options, two alternative explanations. Like, it doesn't mean that there won't be a way to explain it later on, but right now there is no explanation that we can think of or that doctors can give. And also he said, or it's easy to say, well, the doctors were wrong. And I think that opens up, that invites the question, how can we tell the difference if that is actually miraculous, or we don't have the explanation yet, but we'll find it later, or the doctors simply were wrong, maybe the diagnosis were wrong? How could we find out which of these things it would be?
Yeah,
I'd also like the idea that intercessory prayer is effective has been studied time and time again, and there's been absolutely, in fact, some studies have shown even a negative correlation. They believe that people essentially that are being prayed for feel under additional pressure to get well, or may stop doing things that are part of their medication post treatment, aftercare that don't help them heal properly. And so you might want to ask him, where he believed this information came from, and is that a reliable source, or but it's probably not worth chasing at this point, I would say. I do wonder if there's a way to escape the medical anecdote space, because it's really a difficult place to challenge, not because individually you couldn't raise an argument against the likelihood of these things, but I feel like it's just such a difficult space because of the connection to both emotionality, and clearly you've only got one side of a story that's sort of usually 2 parts removed from the actual people that it happened to, or something like this, and it just feels like it's the sort of thing that's worth avoiding if we can.
And I don't think it's a reason for the claim. I think
right.
I think even if it was discovered I'm thinking that we could come up with a medical reason, I don't think it would change his.
Right.
I don't think.
If all of these medical situations had been proven beyond any doubt that they were actually medically based and they weren't miraculous in any way, would that change your faith position at all? And no. Okay, cool. Let's move to something that might.
Yeah, great outsider test stuff to use here, prayer and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Processed that, and eventually processed it through like a blog, and a month or 2 later found out miraculously, or however you classify it, that they were pregnant when there was seemingly no way for that to happen. So
you're at a 7, and there are things that what would make you even go even higher. I know you're very high, of course, high as you can go, but but more confident in the belief is that more experience with things that you can't explain. And
I think you'd have to find a correlation there, though, between the thing happening and.
Here's another broad question to ask. Without an explanation for something, any answer is better than no answer. Like, he's leaping to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Without having sufficient evidence.
Right.
And your belief. Like, there's plenty of things that happen that we can't explain that don't seemingly have a connection to our belief systems. But if there is, for example, I have been praying daily, or other people along with me have been praying daily for this specific thing to happen, and of course that's written all throughout the scriptures, and for Christians as well. When you read the Bible, you see all these acts of miracles and things that God does, and so that's kind of written into the fabric of the belief system at the same time. But
this is a much easier place to challenge, of course, because have things ever been prayed for that God has decided not to fix? Every parent whose child has ever died that was an honest Christian would no doubt have been begging and pleading and praying as hard as you can imagine for their child not to pass away. And, this kind of thing is just silly. It really is just, I don't understand why it's convincing to people.
Yeah, it's a prime way to probe the limits. If we go to the hospital right now and you prayed for some people, how do you expect them to recover at all, or in a day, in a week? And what's the base rate for that? Would it be better than chance or not?
I believe I heard him say, or it felt to me like he was more important to him was that the means by which sometimes prayers were answered were miraculous, and not just someone got better, but it was against any prognosis, any doctor's opinion on the case, and it was a miracle, basically.
That was counterintuitive to.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can connect specific targeted beliefs with the actual occurrence. I think that's more likely then that you go, okay, this really reinforces.
It reinforces.
Yeah,
right?
it reinforces my faith at that point. So.
And so, are you saying that if you prayed for a certain thing and other people prayed for a certain thing, day after day after day, and then the opposite, whatever that is, the opposite happened, would you become less confident in the belief, or you would? I know you'd become more confident if it happened,
Right.
But would you become less confident if it didn't happen?
I think there's certainly that possibility. Yeah. Do I think it? I don't think it's a guarantee that the opposite would happen. Just like I don't think it's actually a guarantee, even if the thing that you prayed for happened miraculously. I've known people that over time have kind of said, well, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was, and just kind of let it go, and it didn't reinforce their faith. But I don't think on the opposite side of that too, I don't think it's a guarantee that it would draw away from your faith. Because one of the uniquenesses about, I think, Christianity and the way we view ourselves within it is that a lot of the things that don't go right in the world are human caused.
Okay.
And so you could pray for something. God doesn't trample on our autonomy, I don't believe, in order to make something necessarily happen.
So if the patient survives, God did it. If the patient dies, it's humans' fault, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That is horrendous worldview. I mean, if he genuinely believes that, that must be quite a difficult way to see the world, to really believe that. I wonder to what extent he really does see these things in this way. That if somebody passed away at a young age or something, would he really believe there must be some human cause for that, some person to blame for it? And if they recovered miraculously, would he really say that was God? It seems strange. One other thing just to point out, I think you did a slight rephrasing. So would you say, or I think it was, or something like that. I try to really avoid those reframing of what the person's saying. Would you agree is usually a nicer way of saying it. Would you agree that blah blah blah, and then present your case? But I think you were saying, so you're saying that.
Yeah, I shouldn't put words in his mouth, for sure.
Yeah, it makes them feel not heard in the first instance, I think, if you do that as well.
The Texas sharpshooter, I don't know why I haven't heard that term.
Yeah, that's like having a special, you just only count the answered prayers and not the millions of unanswered prayers. It's like you put the bullseye over the specific evidence that you want to have count.
I see.
Yeah.
Also an example of survivor bias, ironically.
William, what you said about it being difficult to look at the world through that lens. Everything good comes from God. Everything bad that happened, or not necessarily everything, but if you pray for something and the prayer is answered and it's a good thing, then it comes from God. If it doesn't come true, then, or it's not answered, then, and the bad things have happened, it comes from humans. That would be interesting. Like you could explore that by asking if hypothetically there was an evil God, and how could, and all the good things came from humans and what we did, and all the terrible things that happened were caused by God. How would we be able to tell the difference?
How could you tell the difference between an evil God and randomness? And
that's really good. I had not heard that before, but I like that. Yeah.
him, although I still believe God intervenes in the affairs of human beings, I don't think he does it in such a way as to control and force people, especially as it relates to relating to him. But what that means, I think, in this situation is if I pray for something, and it just doesn't happen. The person doesn't get healed, or the thing that I want, I desperately need to happen. Maybe there's a whole lot of things at play there that I'm not aware of that prevented it from happening. Why God would choose not to interact or act upon it in that, I couldn't begin to guess. I don't know.
So I think what you're telling me is that there are certain scenarios or certain things that could come along, certain things that happen that would strengthen your belief, but on the other side, that there's not much that could happen to make you less confident in your belief. That it's easier to fall this way than probably from a 7 to a 7.1 than it would be like from a 7 to a 6.9. I think what you're saying.
Well, one thing we could ask here is like, do Christians die at a reduced rate? Like, for example, current pandemic, etc. Is there any reduction at all in the numbers of Christians dying? But even before something like this, in general, look at the actuarial tables. Do Christians die at a reduced rate overall? That wouldn't necessarily be categoric proof if they did or didn't, but it would certainly be interesting to see what the margin of difference was here. Yeah.
Well, he already said, though, that he believed that at an increasing rate, studies came out that confirmed that prayer had a positive effect on health. So
right.
It might just be that he would say, yeah, I believe that's the case. So
interesting.
He does value statistical data there. Yeah.
Certainly something you could look up, right? Well, here's the thing. Would insurance companies give you better rates on your life insurance if you're a Christian?
Yeah.
Only if you're a real Christian.
That's interesting.
Oh man, just thinking like you need like a person in an insurance company to make sure you're actually giving insurance to real Christians. That would be a great.
Oh my God, we've just reinvented the Inquisition. Oh no!
Could you imagine the actuarial tables?
Yeah.
Me personally, I think that to be true, but if I read the story of Job, for example, and I see it's not just one terrible thing that he went through. If I had to go through a series of really difficult things that just never let up and seemed to rob me of all things that I held dear. I think I could see certainly moment to moment that it would undermine. It would take that belief down a few notches. Now, where I would come out, hopefully, would be still back where I started, but not necessarily.
So that would be a kind of a temporary thing.
Yeah, I think if we're all honest, there's things that we go through in life where it's loss of a loved one or some other things that are just extremely difficult to go through.
Sure.
There are stretches where we definitely struggle with our faith. Yeah.
Maybe it'll help if we talk about Timmy's belief in Allah, and let's say, make it easier to talk about that. Timmy believes his belief at a 7, and he could easily or more easily become more confident in his belief, and be very, very difficult for him to become less confident in his belief. Mm-hmm. How can we show Timmy?
Yeah.
How can we? It seems like it's going to be very difficult to help Timmy adjust his confidence in his belief if it needs to be adjusted. Right. And maybe he needs to adjust it to be more confident. I don't, or less. But how could we help him to adjust his confidence in confidence in his belief?
Oh wow. I kind of don't look at it that way, I guess.
Oh, okay.
In the sense that, do I want Timothy to believe what I believe? Yeah, I do.
Right,
But I think if I want Timothy to be like me, then I win Timothy through modeling what I believe well. Again, explaining my faith well, being consistent in the way that I live it. Many of us Christians and I suppose just people in general, have undermined our own belief before people just by the way we've behaved or talked or even voted for that matter. But I think by witnessing to Timothy, I would try to win him to my side. And honestly, at times in that process to go, if he asked me something that I didn't know, just to say I don't know. And we tell our students that all the time, that, I will do my best to give you an answer that I'm highly confident in, but there may be times where I just go, I don't know.
And I just
unsettled.
so I'm asking him. Oh, this is. Go ahead, Reid.
Yeah, like if we just flipped it and you had Timmy, the Muslim, witnessing to him and wanting, he's saying he just wants to like use persuasion to witness or some kind of like appeal to the consistency that he uses to like to believe it in his life, like the benefits the belief gives him in his life. These are not good reasons to believe in Islam. So why should it be a good reason for Timmy to just switch to Christianity?
What's the question? How could we phrase? Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a great question that you asked. If Timothy could easily increase his confidence in Islam, but it would say it would take a lot more to decrease his confidence, how would he ever be able to adjust his confidence to something lower if that was what would be appropriate? And I think he didn't really understand the question that way.
Well, I think he said that you'd live by example, or you would show him just who you are, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then
show him that you're such a good person and that this belief gives you such good benefits. This is not good reasons to believe in Christianity or Islam.
Well, you could ask then,
Or at least they're equal.
you could ask then if Timmy lived by example and was a good person, would that sway you towards Islam?
Yeah, I think I do hit that.
Okay.
You did.
Us as human beings, we don't like that answer.
Sure. Right. And I'm just envisioning a scenario like where Timmy, really tries to explain it and he really tries to model it to you, and he's very consistent with the way he lives his life. Sure. And by all accounts, he's a good person, and he's charitable, and I is there a test? Is there something we can do? Is this as far as we can go? I
think one thing that I would point out to Timothy or anyone that didn't.
You switch from outsider test to defeasibility test.
Yeah.
You set up a great outsider thing. You just had to say, how could someone on the outside, or how could I tell which way to go?
Yeah.
About knowing the truth of their belief. If they're both modeling, what the belief is doing for them in life. Okay, now what?
Believe what I believe is the fundamental difference. I think that you find in Christianity is grace. Is that, and what's meant by that is the unmerited favor of God, right? It's when you read 2 Corinthians, we're challenged to be Christ's ambassadors to reconcile others back to God. That's our mission on the planet.
Sorry, what is grace? I'm just trying
to reconcile others back to God. So there's been a void. If you take the garden scene from Genesis.
Now he's appealing to this, basically trying to get back to God, as in survive death.
So I think he's using the word. I'm sorry. I think he's using the word grace now as a way to distinguish, like someone who's Muslim maybe from someone who's Christian. No, that's how I took it. So, and that's how I ran it kind of this way. And it's really hard for me to understand what grace is, but I think that's what we were.
Yeah, I mean, it's the magical part that Christians. It's sort of, and it's not defined deliberately, isn't it? I mean, he's just using this conceptual idea of grace as the idea that really it's the unique one, but this is begging the question. He's asserting the thing that he's trying to prove, right? By saying Christianity has grace, what he's saying is Christianity is the true, proper way to survive death and come to God and all this other stuff, and that's all it really is. And of course, Islam and every other major religion is going to say something along the same lines, or have equivalents.
A form of grace, yeah.
Yeah, it relates to soteriology, how you're saved, and then the eschatology of like how that's going to work and how that relates to death and judgment and the final destiny.
And there was a break in the relationship by Adam and Eve's sin against God and trying to set themselves up to be like God. I mean, it's essentially what happens there. And essentially what I think is we've been wrestling with as human beings ever since is we're wrestling with that, but we can't earn our way back to a right standing in the relationship with God. God instead offers that to us.
See, there you go. It's a free thing. It's not works. It's merely faith-based. That's the kind of Christianity. That's the kind of soteriology that he has. All faith, not works.
Through Christ himself.
Any questions about that?
Yeah. So say it again. So he's saying that the truth of his claim is based on how strongly the faith you have in the claim. Is that what you're saying?
He's trying to distinguish Christianity from Islam.
Right.
I think Islam is more about works. Christianity, and this flavor of Christianity is about merely faith, and that is a kind of grace that you can receive. So you don't have to do anything. You're just merely saved by believing that you receive that grace. So this is like a positive thing.
Okay, so I didn't catch that.
It's a distinguishing factor from Christianity and Islam. So
I didn't catch that. Yeah.
So it's a selling point of Christianity. You don't have to do anything. Just believe, and you survive death. So it's about the psychosocial motivation of having a way to deny the existence of death. That's what it's about.
It's also a problem with Christianity because what it essentially means is a good person living their whole life not accepting Jesus is probably doomed to hell. And a mass murderer who repents moments before the electric chair is saved. It is an odd position that doesn't come without difficulties.
Yeah, same.
Rather than us earning our way back, and that's a fundamental difference, I think, not only between Christianity and Islam, but a lot of ways of operating within a belief system. Is a lot of belief systems are built around I have to do X number of things or certain types of things in order to get my standing back before God.
So it seems like there is a test we can do, and that is overall this level of grace.
Yeah.
In that in Christianity, we would expect overall to see a higher level of grace and then maybe Islam or another religion. So how could we know that? How could we see like higher levels of grace in one religion versus another religion? How can we test for that?
Yeah, I don't think that is a good question.
I didn't understand what grace was, honestly.
I think another good principle is that don't ask questions like that. Assume things that you believe to be false.
Yeah, right. Because I'm assuming that there is something called grace, and we should probably clarify what that is. And
if there's a level of grace, then there is grace. That means God's real. That means Christianity is true.
I made the assumption because it's a word that it's a thing.
How do we build a graceometer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's really, how does grace relate to Christianity being true? And how does grace relate to being able to test that any God exists or any of this is true? Yeah.
And what would Timmy say if you said, well, we know that Christianity is true because of grace? What do you think would Timmy respond to that? That'd be a good question.
There are plenty of features in Islam which you will only gain access to if you believe in Islam. Grace is only compelling if you believe in Christianity. So these are all features, providing you've already made the jump to believe that the features are real. So for somebody who's neutral,
Right.
Why would I make the first move to believe that Islam's features are in any way preferable or not preferable over Christianity's features? In either case, you have to make the first move to assume those features are real.
Well, you're going to see a rabbit hole then.
If you had to pray 5 times a day in order to get to heaven, how would we be able to find that out? Would we want to pray to God 5 times a day if that was the case?
Yeah.
How can you test it? Well, I mean, if you really wanted to do some analytics, I think you could do it, but that'd be really hard to do because so much of it happens organically, person to person, neighbor to neighbor. Churches certainly, if you look at churches in America, everything from food banks to shelters to orphan care and on, you see an expression of that. And I think it's the one thing that drives us as Christ followers greatly is that
this is the broader definition of grace is that which is good in Christianity, right? This is the kind of grace acts through people act in grace. You hear it
Charity.
quite a lot. Yeah, it's kind of.
I think that's what he's saying. But yeah.
It's the magical component of Christianity, I think, this in the sort of colloquial sense.
Recognize that we're receiving forgiveness without having earned it. And this grace comes to us from God Himself to us, and therefore we are challenged and driven to express that back out to people around us, those that certainly to everybody really without qualifications to it.
So I presume we could do a test in the sense that if we didn't know people's religion and then we found out how much people gave to charities or food banks, and then we would be able to test for that, like overall, once we realized who gave the most, that people who are Christian gave the most to charities and the most charitable, as opposed to other religions or non-religions, probably.
I think it would be an indication that you're on the right track with that.
I wonder if that's been done. I don't know. Like I said, I think it happens so every day and so organically within the context of relationships that it'd be hard to quantify. It'd be hard to measure.
You dodged a bullet there, sir, because they classify giving to church as charitable giving quite often, and therefore Christians as a group tend to donate very generously to charities.
Oh, I have no idea. I really don't know the test.
And in any case, probably wouldn't prove the thing you were trying to prove.
Yeah.
That I was just watching that. I was just waiting for the car crash, but I think it swerved.
In some way,
if we were to run that test for some reason, and they ran 10,000 people, and I have no idea what would happen. But let's say for whatever reason, people who prayed to Allah were more charitable and more giving than all the other religions.
Sure.
Would you then be less confident in your belief, or that wouldn't change?
I think I would ask why. And certainly, I mean, atheists can be more charitable than I can be. It's not a competition in that sense in any case, but
I think this relates to the principle of reciprocity. Like if you're giving something in some situation, you're more likely to give back. Like, so it's like you get these letters in the mail with like a penny in it, and then that makes you want to fill out the survey that they're wanting to get. So this is kind of like that principle on a big scale. Christianity is offering you this huge benefit of eternal life. So don't you want to do stuff in the real world, like give adopt people, adopt children, give to charity. You're receiving so much, you need to give back.
Interesting. See, this is your background, Reid. So this kind of blows over me. I don't really catch that. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just say that because I think you're telling me that is something that a way we could differentiate you and Timmy's belief, and I'm just.
I think it differentiates us in the sense that in our relationship to God, right? Not necessarily in the measurable outcomes in life per se. Although I do believe that I should be generous with my time and with my life and everything that I can be, because God has been so extravagantly generous towards me.
There you go.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I made an assumption that it would matter.
I guess one thing you could ask is there anything that we could observe if we were to watch you throughout your life on a day-to-day basis? Is there anything that we would notice about you and how your life was acting where we wouldn't notice the same thing in somebody who was in a similar circumstances but not a Christian? Is there
really
anything that we would you be more charitable on your day-to-day in a way that would be so distinct from somebody else who could be being charitable? Would you receive preferential medical treatment from the divine over somebody else? Is there anything that we could really notice that was actually,
if we had no
different?
access to your beliefs and no access to your eternal life,
Like the Truman Show test.
Right, and we just saw a movie of your life. We just saw
Right.
you, now you're eating, and now you're walking the dog, and now you're doing this. What would we see that would, or would we see anything?
Because he might genuinely believe that you might, and that would be interesting in and of itself, right? If we could, let's classify this as a Truman Show test. There were cameras everywhere. We were watching your whole life, and we had somebody else that wasn't a Christian. We were watching their whole life. He might genuinely believe that you could see the benefits of being a Christian being expressed somehow in the physical world in a way that that we could then say, well, actually, that's interesting. How could we measure that? Is that something that we could actually look at and compare to, other people on average across different groups of Christians and non-Christians? So, yeah.
I think you just invented a new test. Truman
The Truman Show test.
Truman Show test. I don't know. Is that a thing?
No idea.
I like it. Will. I like it.
And
Copyright.
This may not be the argument he's making, but it seems like if Christianity is false, then we would not have good consequences happen in the world, like people giving to charity and all of that. This is a appeal to consequences fallacy. Is he appealing to good stuff that's happening, or I don't know if this is what he's saying.
I don't think he. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
He keeps saying these kinds of things happen naturally all the time, organically. He says Christianity can be a factor that leads to that, but there are so many other things that people would do this regardless. So I don't think
he did say an atheist could give to charity maybe more than he did, and he could, he recognizes that the other groups may be charitable still.
Generous with my time and with my life and everything that I can be, because God has been so extravagantly generous towards me. It's not that God's demanding it of me, but I feel so blessed to have God do that for me that I feel propelled and compelled to do the same for others. I think
that's your penny in the envelope right there.
There you go. Yeah.
It's a strong indicator. It's like one of those things as you're measuring, like, does it take you up like a little notch or down a little notch? It actually could have a more powerful impact on the negative side, meaning that if you see a Christian, it's like, oh man, you're saved by grace, but I don't see you extending grace to your neighbors. It can very quickly, take away from that because it's expected of you, and then maybe that's part of it. Is what do you expect of people, and then why do they do it, kind of thing. So.
I think you're telling me that that's not a test now. I think.
I don't. Yeah. I like I said, I think it indicates that a person is practicing what they believe. But when it comes to grace, I still wouldn't consider it a test. I just think it's different. The way Christianity views grace, the way reconciling the human being to God, how that happens within the framework of Christianity is only made possible through grace. It's not made possible by earning, right? Versus other religions where you have to accomplish certain things. You have to do certain things. You have to show that you deserve. Deserving's got nothing to do with it in Christianity. God says, because I love you, I'm doing this. I'm extending this grace to you. So,
this is a classic cult initiation technique of love bombing. So this just plays on our human bias to accept this thing because of this classic cult initiation technique.
What's the technique? So,
love bombing, talking about love and how much love is happening in this religion, ideology, this community.
So someone loves you just regardless of what you're doing, and they just love you.
Yeah, love bombing tends to be expressed by lots of people giving you just constant positive input, positive feelings, talking, you're really making you feel like you're very welcome, that you're very interesting to everybody. I'm not sure that this would qualify as love bombing. Like, it feels like an argument from charitable intent or something. I don't know. Would you classify this as love bombing, Reid?
It is a little different. Yeah, it seems like, humans love bomb like to actual physical people, but this is more of an abstract love bomb. It's like just big love bomb, the one big one.
Complete aside, but big love bomb is actually one of my internet handles, so you can call me that. That's totally an option for you if you wish to.
I feel like at this point the conversation is not really, I feel kind of lost. I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm not understanding this. I really didn't understand that aspect of Christianity versus another religion.
And I think that's the reason why it's so hard to. You're struggling to find a way to test the belief.
Yep.
And he is. I think
he's saying, why test it? Because it's not a feature, right, in the sense that you don't have to. I mean, if you don't do charitable works to somebody, that's okay.
Right.
Do you think? What is, we talked about the cold, and like I don't think, not joking, like genuinely seems to be having an impact on sort of your focus and attention here. Was there anything else so other than being warmer and a more comfortable space in order to engage? Because I think that's a really useful lesson. Like, don't be uncomfortable whilst also trying to engage in these conversations. Is there anything else that might have been distracting you, or perhaps affecting your efficacy in this moment?
I don't know. It's possible. I mean, it's just like, that's the thing with SE. Sometimes you're on the ball, and sometimes, it just, you look back at it and like, what was I doing? I just wasn't. It just, I think it happens to me quite a bit, and sometimes I don't know what kind of day I'm having until I'm like halfway through a conversation, I guess.
Happens to everyone.
We've reviewed a lot of your videos, Mark, to think that this was that common an effect. I think the good thing is, if you do make a mistake, for God's sake, don't upload it to the internet and then subsequently do a live stream with 3 other people, just constantly commenting on it, because that would be the real mistake.
It's all right. It's okay to like show your mistakes and stuff, because that's how that's how you learn. And if we all like hold back our videos and just show our best 10% that we do, or that we think we do, that's not gonna help anybody.
Rethinking my plans of creating my own YouTube channel now.
All right.
Yeah. I think for us as human beings, then we practice it very imperfectly going forward. So that's why I'm always kind of hesitant. We do it well sometimes and not so well other times. My wife and I were licensed as foster parents, and we fostered.
So are we.
Oh, awesome. It's not a test, but when you look around the room, you spend weeks and weeks with a group of people. They're all getting licensed as foster parents, and when you hear their stories and you realize well over half are probably doing so out of their faith base, versus there's other reasons in the room why people do it, certainly, and I would never say, people can definitely do it out of the goodness of their heart, as we measure goodness in people. But I think as we measure goodness in people, it's also an imperfection. There's no, if something is good, it has to always be good and never not good. And to me, that's a perfection, and only God can hold that. But it doesn't mean that as image bearers of God, we don't practice that in life. Hopefully we do.
That was fantastic.
We do a lot more.
That was just fantastic. I just so are we. Just fantastic.
Well, I didn't know where you were going with that, and I think it caused him to qualify some things.
Yes.
Of doing good in the world than bad in the world. So
this is a shout out to Nathan.
He makes the claim Christians do good in the world because of their belief in Christianity. Does this mean Christianity is true? If more people do good in the world because of their belief in Christianity? Is this good evidence that Christianity is true? That's the logic of this whole thing.
It's not a good SE move, but one of the things I often like to ask at this point is that does that make an atheist who does the same thing better because they're doing it without the religious motivation? As in, does it somehow undermine the goodness that the Christian, the actor that the Christian is enacting because they believe there's a reward and there's a mechanism and
no eternal consequences to it? Yeah.
Right.
If we took the top 20 things that any human being could do that is like a good thing to do in life, and atheists outcompete Christians in on all 20, would this make Christianity false? That's the prediction of this logic, and that would falsify, that logic. That if that's what he's thinking is giving him confidence that Christianity is true because of all the good things Christians do. But this has no relation to the truth of Christianity.
Right. I'm not sure that this is. I'm not sure that this is his claim. I'm not sure he's still focused on explaining why Christianity is true, what makes it true. I think he's just explaining what's so great about Christianity and what he likes so much about it, not necessarily what makes it true. However, it would be good to come back to the epistemology and ask, so how does this, what's the relationship between this and the belief being true?
Yeah, the truth has never really been on the table here, and so it feels like he's selling, not selling. That's ungenerous. I don't mean to say that I think he's selling. I think he's just explaining. He's celebrating. He's showing you what's great about it, as Janosch is saying. But epistemology's never really been pressed here. It is unfortunate.
Yeah, how does the good things that Christians do in the world relate to Christianity being true? Just ask for that connecting assumption.
There's a concise question.
Yeah.
Let's, just as a thought experiment, Nathan, let's suppose, and this is not my idea, someone thought of this, and let's suppose you're given a box.
Yeah.
And you open the box, and if you open the box, you are given this gift of perfect truth.
A perfect what?
Perfect truth.
Perfect truth. Okay.
If your belief didn't happen to be true, obviously I'm not saying that, but if it did not happen to be true, would you want to open that box?
Would I
That's
want to
an odd
open
framing
that
of the
box?
question, isn't it? Isn't the framing?
Yeah.
If you could have, would you choose to open the box if the answer was inside? Right. I think is the key thing.
Nathan,
so would you wish to know it if you?
Nathan emailed me last night, and he told me.
Oh, okay. You got
where
corrected.
I went wrong.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I can say that almost flippantly, right? Because it's a thought experiment rather than something I have to live out.
Yeah.
But how
would your life change, do you think?
It would depend greatly on what that truth is that we've discovered. It's like some people think
truth of your belief. I'm just.
Here's Nathan's comment. That's pretty good. Here's what he says. He says, imagine we have a box before us of truth. We can ask it any question we want. It will provide all the reasons and evidence we need to believe something is or is not the case. I usually ask 3 questions about the box. Is there any questions you wouldn't ask the box? If the box could only show us ways in which the belief is mistaken, would there be any question we shouldn't ask it? And what's your first question for the box? That's cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Still, I really liked your follow-up question. How would your life change if you found that out?
Yeah.
The response is interesting here.
And that's a probing for psychosocial motivations question. That's great.
It is a good question, definitely.
And I know.
So we're basically saying kind of almost,
we're
kind of saying almost as a negative image here, meaning like then that would mean that my belief is not true, or at least it's only partially true. Let's say.
And I think about that, about things I believe, and I'm just not your belief, like
right.
Something I intensely believe that if I open the box, would I want to open the box, in the sense that if it's a belief that would change everything, like if it's a belief that would change my job, my marriage, my would I really want to open the box? I asked myself that, and
Yeah.
and so I just
I think for me, absolutely. In fact, I would say, and maybe this is a kind of a corny way to say it, but I think I've already opened that box. I told you earlier that, I didn't grow up in church. My idea growing up at church was you sit on a wooden bench and see what goes to sleep fastest, your head or your rear end, right? And that was kind of my concept, and be really quiet along the way. But
I would have
somewhere.
asked, you've opened the box, so are you saying you already have absolute perfect truth?
I get there.
Okay. Yeah.
Along the way,
Right,
in my mid-20s, I opened a box that on the box, at least, it was labeled, this is true, this is truth, this is who you are, who God is.
Are all boxes that are labeled truth, do they all contain true things?
Yeah, that's like a red flag.
Oh, I happen to have one right here. Let's see.
Yeah.
If there are 50 boxes in front of you and all of them claimed to contain the truth, but they definitely all contain different things, how would you go about identifying which one was correct? And what's the odds that none of them are correct?
There's different ways to ask this for sure, yeah.
There was a moment as well when he said that he would definitely, he would want to know, and then he said so it would mean that what I believed wasn't true, and then he started to believe it again and said maybe it's only partially not true at least, and I was like building it back up again.
Trying to salvage his belief even though it's not true. Yeah.
Opened it, and I think I've been exploring that box ever since. Yeah, I don't know that I've explored it. I definitely haven't explored the whole box, but.
And if Timmy said that he's opened that box,
Yeah, sure.
where
I'm sure
are
he
we?
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to taste and see for yourself, honestly. I think that's really critical, important in our society today that we do that. Certainly on the belief level, but in a lot of things that we avoid anymore because it's uncomfortable or it doesn't have easy answers to it. And I know I'm projecting myself as, I've got easy answers, but they're actually not easy to come by at all. Yeah. You take a step of faith and you start exploring, and somewhere along the way you either believe in it or you don't believe in it. It still doesn't arrive you at a place of, complete understanding and 100% confidence that I'm definitely here now. I've got it, So.
And as the interlocutor is just throughout, actually, and there have been some sort of funny moments, but genuinely speaking, throughout the video, like I think he's been a really honest guy. I think sometimes the questions have gotten a little bit confused, that confidence versus truth, and etc. And as a result, I think I don't think it's necessarily been as clear, but I think honestly he's very aware and very reflective and things, and I think it's really nice to have a conversation with somebody like that.
Oh yeah.
The other thing I think was interesting is that if you were just to ask somebody, what if it wasn't true? Like that seems like a much more difficult proposition. I think you get some different answer. Somehow the metaphor of opening the box of truth somehow makes people think about it differently. And you can see this happening here, that because he's sort of conceptualizing this box and imagining going there and therefore having to open it, there's something about the sort of engagement in that pantomime that's making him confront the possible circumstance, the outcome of that event, rather than just directly asking if it wasn't true, what would happen. It's interesting. I like thought experiments like that.
Well, from here on, we'll call this Nathan's box of truth.
I'm not sure. Like, I agree that I got the feeling that he was a very honest interlocutor throughout the conversation.
Oh,
Not at this point with the box. I'm not so sure, because it seems like at first he heard the thought experiment, and I'm pretty sure he heard, this is the absolute truth, perfect truth. We know that this, when we open the box, that this is true. And then at first he tried to salvage his belief. I learned that belief is not true or only partially true. And then he goes on saying, I believe I've already opened the box. And then, of course, he qualifies that saying, I haven't explored the whole box. And suddenly it's a completely different box and it's not a thought experiment anymore. And I'm not sure if he's kind of shying away from the thought experiment and from the idea that it could just be not true.
But I think this might be just the dichotomy between his confidence, like as in his commitment to the idea, contrasting against his intellectual awareness of the of the fact that he really can't honestly make that move. So I think the conflict is not trying to be honest versus dishonest, but more, how can I truly represent how I feel about this position against how I can logically, what can I then logically claim? What can I actually say? How I could relate to this logically and rationally. So I don't think it's honesty, dishonesty. It's conviction versus rationality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Talk about the reason why, or one of the reasons why I do this show, this podcast, is that we seem to have large segments of our population who believe really strong, intense beliefs about things.
Yeah.
And sometimes these beliefs are completely at opposite, opposed to each other. And trying to work through that, trying to think of how can we bridge this? How can we, if we have two groups and they both believe so strongly and both can't be possibly true, I'm concerned that, if both, with the intensity of those beliefs, there's no way that one group could discover that their belief is incorrect if it was incorrect.
Right. And it's even more difficult for that to occur when beliefs are rooted in cultures and generations as well, especially if that's the only thing you know.
Yeah.
I do think that that's rapidly changing, very rapidly changing in America.
Something about this makes me feel that he doesn't think about America in that sentence. Somehow he wasn't. I don't know. I wondered if there was a moment of self-awareness there, and then I'm wondering maybe there wasn't a moment of self-awareness.
Yeah. I instantly thought of the question, is that the case for Christianity?
Right. I would like to have grounded that in, do you recognize that as true for Christianity as equal to other positions?
Yeah. I think I was going for the kumbaya moment, so. Yeah.
Go back too far that a lot of people would profess, and some people do still today, that America is a Christian nation, let's say. I worked in many countries overseas. My wife and I were overseas for a long time before we ever came to the university to do what we're doing now. And in those cultures, you get a very different perspective on the world and belief systems that exist out there. But if that's all you've ever known and you've never been exposed to anything else, I think that's my biggest worry for America, is we're too quick to avoid it, to avoid the conversation.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
And which is why I love what you're doing. I think it's so necessary that we can journey together, even if we don't come to the same conclusions.
And in the spirit of that, thank you. Thank you for coming and speaking with me. And I think just, us talking and having a conversation, maybe we can get somewhere, and I can just ask you about your beliefs and we can just explore it together and not, get emotional about it, upset about it, and I really, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I think ultimately we all have to decide for ourselves, and but in that process, I encourage myself and all of us to, hey, let's explore around. Let's see what other people believe, and let's see, am I in the right box? Did I open the correct box, or is there another box that maybe I should explore? I mean, I feel pretty confident I'm in the right box at this point, but at the same time, I never want to close myself off to or dismiss people from where they're at because they're different than me. I think that's just one of the worst things that we could probably do.
Kumbaya.
That was swerved a little at the end there. I thought he was going to close himself off to the potential for other boxes to contain truth, was what I thought he was going to say, but he then talked about closing himself off to other people because of what they believed, which was a bit strange. But yeah, interesting.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
I'm really gonna have to do more videos so that you can give one of mine a kicking, just privately. It doesn't have to be broadcast. Just tear into
and
it.
I need to get on. I know, and I want to get on a video where I'm not reviewing. I want to review somebody else's video. I don't know. I'm just always on mine. I want to be able to review.
Well, you keep
too.
making such fun videos, Mark. What do you think?
We wouldn't mind doing it public. Don't worry.
Oh, well, tearing me out. Yes, I'm sure that would be much more fun. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But not with me in the room, I'm sure. Or at least you'd just have me permanently muted. That would be it.
No, I want you there. I want to look at you while I do it.
Any comments, anybody in the chat? Got one here from Robert. There are many ways an interlocutor can manage cognitive dissonance during the conversation. Reframing the question or answering an unasked question are a couple of them.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And right, I don't think he was purposely trying to set up like straw men in that sense. I think, trying to think of a way to. He was framing it in the way he understood to him. Is like I would answer a question as I understood for me too. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of those. When a move feels evasive. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be coming from a place of dishonesty, right? Like the cognitive dissonance is going to make people avoid things even without noticing. And Robert's comment, I think, is a great example of those kinds of things. But it might feel dishonest to you if you're listening to it, and you might think, come on, that was cheap. But maybe they're just not. They're not ready to look at it that way, or hadn't noticed it.
Exactly what I meant when I said dishonest, but I didn't mean dishonest. I meant this cognitive dissonance, and therefore this his attempt of evading having to think about the implications of this thought experiment in a way. Yeah,
that's a good point.
But,
thanks, guys. I really do appreciate this. I mean, I said this before, but I always learn. I always advance my SE more when I do these kinds of things. I can really see where different avenues I could have taken and how I can improve.
Thanks for keep making the videos. I mean, honestly, the more people doing this, the better it gets, and the more we talk about it, the better it gets. But yeah, and also great interlocutor, like really nice guy, definitely.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
Yeah,
and I love the ending. I love this at the end how you kind of. Like you said, you were going for the kumbaya moment, and it worked, and it was great. And yeah,
I got a tear.
Even
single tear.
A little bit. And he stressed out. He stressed out how important it was for him not to be closed off and to be open-minded. And I thought that, and he wanted to have the conversation, which is why we're doing. It. We want to have the conversation. We want other people to want to have the conversation as well. And to enjoy it. Yeah, that's true.
Yep. All right. We'll be back next week with another review video with someone somewhere. And thanks, Mark.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.